Welcome to Socrates Beyond Time, a place where I share stories inspired by the thought-provoking spirit of the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates through slow, deep, and contemplative dialogues. In the series Socrates and the Masters of Persuasion, Socrates journeys across time to meet influential figures throughout history, engaging them in conversations that explore the true nature of persuasion, not merely as a technique, but as a way human beings connect with one another. Though these encounters are fictional, the spirit of Socrates and the insights revealed in each dialogue carry a timeless value, inviting us to reflect on how we think, speak, and influence others. If you'd like to explore this journey more deeply, you're warmly invited to visit socratesbeyondtime.blogspot.com, where these reflections continue, quietly yet meaningfully. There are encounters that no longer revolve around what is right, but around what truly produces action. When Socrates faces Claude Hopkins, Persuasion steps out of the world of ideas and into the world of numbers, where every value is measured by response and every truth must be proven by behavior. One asks questions to seek essence. One removes everything that cannot be measured to find what works. Between them lies not denial, but a very real tension. If effectiveness becomes the only measure, are people moving closer to the truth, or simply becoming ever easier to guide without realizing it? Chicago, early 20th century. A high-floor office overlooking factories releasing columns of smoke. The afternoon divided into numbers. The advertising world at that time still believed in inspiration, believed in grand slogans, believed in the intuition of the copywriter. Whoever spoke more brilliantly won. Claude Hopkins sat at his desk, surrounded by clipped advertisements and dense statistical tables. He did not ask whether he was creative enough. He asked instead, what truly makes people act? Before him lay two versions of the same advertisement. Only one would be sent out. He chose the one that could be measured. And from that moment, persuasion was no longer pure art. It became an experiment. Numbers began replacing praise. Response replaced inspiration. Effectiveness replaced beauty. An old order quietly cracked. By the window stood Socrates, silent. He looked at the numbers as if they were arguments proven through evidence. He understood the value of verification. Yet a quiet question rose in his mind. When we keep only what is effective, do we still have the patience to ask whether it is true or merely useful?
You do not ask them what they think. There is no need. You do not ask what they feel. Emotion cannot be measured. Action can.
Hopkins turned, looking at Socrates for the first time. His gaze was not cold, only intensely focused.
Who are you? Someone who asks questions that cannot be turned into statistics.
Hopkins chuckled softly.
Then you probably won't like my work. I am not certain. Tell me, what are you seeking in all these numbers? Truth.
Socrates tilted his head slightly.
The truth of what? Of behavior. Human beings are very good at lying to themselves, but they do not lie when they reach for their wallet.
Socrates stepped closer to the desk.
So you believe action is the final truth? The only truth that can be verified? Then, if a message makes people act, but leaves them poorer, more dependent, or stripped of dignity, is it still true?
Hopkins paused. A single beat of silence.
I do not judge the purpose. I measure effectiveness. You have just spoken something very dangerous in the tone of science.
Hopkins met his eyes.
Dangerous? No. What is dangerous is trusting inspiration without testing it. Dangerous are the advertisers who believe they are artists while they burn money and deceive themselves. So you have killed art? No, I have only refused to call what does not work art.
Socrates smiled faintly.
You sound like a physician who does not care whether the patient cries or laughs, only about the vital signs. The patient wants to recover, not to be comforted. And what of the soul?
Hopkins shrugged.
The soul does not appear in reports.
A silence settled across the room.
In Athens, I once saw sophists win through speech. Later, I saw Edward Bernays win through the unconscious, and you win by eliminating everything that cannot be measured.
Hopkins nodded.
Persuasion does not need to be lofty. It only needs to work. But if we keep only what works, what will human beings gradually become?
Hopkins thought for a moment.
Creatures that can be predicted. And when human beings can be predicted completely, are they still free?
Hopkins remained silent longer this time.
Persuasion does not fall within the scope of my work.
Socrates looked at him without judgment.
That is precisely what worries me. When science learns how humans act, but no one remains to ask what humans ought to become.
Hopkins turned back to his desk, marking another line.
I do not build the world. I simply help messages reach where they need to go. But the one who knows how to send a message the farthest often holds more power than the one who asks questions.
Hopkins stopped once more.
Perhaps, but power does not come from numbers. It comes from the person who decides what those numbers will be used for.
Socrates nodded slowly.
Then, responsibility does not lie in the data, but in the soul of the one who reads the data.
Hopkins said nothing.
Claude Hopkins transformed advertising from a guessing game into a repeatable process. A/B testing, measurement, the elimination of intuition. He taught the world a simple rule. If a message produces no action, it is only noise. Yet this imagined meeting leaves behind a question no spreadsheet can answer. When persuasion becomes a science, who will stand to protect the things that cannot be measured, such as dignity, meaning, and inner freedom? For science is very good at answering what works, but it always grows silent when asked, what should it work for?